Hello everybody, Kelly Rice here, but I write under my pen name, KM Rice. And to begin with, I apologize for my lack of an exciting top. It is kind of a nice tank top, accentuated by a Smaug necklace. And if you don't know who Smaug is, I pity you. So, today's question is sent in by Lee Jensen. And Lee asks, or rather, says, you stated recently that, be it a blessing or a curse, your inner voice is your creed. In what ways has it blessed or cursed you? Do you keep score between the blesses and the curses, and if so, which is winning? Lee is referring to a quote that I shared recently on my social media from I guess it's technically a short story or a novella, The Legends of the Fall, about some people who hear their inner voices with great clarity, and those people are either driven mad or become legends. And that's paraphrasing the quote. I should be responsible and have it in front of me, but I'm not, because I don't plan ahead. One of my idols is Amy Lee, and I recently watched an interview with her, and they asked her how having a kid has changed her life, and that was the first thing she said was, I don't plan ahead, and now I have to. Another reason I love you, Amy Lee. Anyway. When I first encountered that quote, it was in the film of Legends of the Fall, and I immediately felt like it connected with a deep part of me. And that side of me was my creativity. And in what ways has following that inner voice been a blessing or a curse? Well, here are some obvious ways that my choice to follow this voice could be seen as a curse. The most prominent one is that I am not financially independent. This is even being an independent author. It's not a big money-making venture. That said, I also get a lot of freelance work, especially as an editor, and I work as an independent contractor or consultant for various film companies. And one of them is a project that you will be able to get your hands on in November. I believe in the US it comes out November 21st, I want to say, and it is the massive tome Middle-earth from script to screen, building the world of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which I lived in New Zealand for a short while to assist with the writing of that book along with fellow author Daniel Falconer. So that's an example of a job that I did as a contract job as a writer. So how I look at it is you have to be careful. You know, most people tell you come up with a plan. How long are you going to give this writing thing a try before you have to say, no, I need to just stop, I suck, and go get another job so that you can support yourself. I actually probably could be financially independent and support myself if I lived in a different state, or potentially in a different place in my state. As it is, where I live is, I believe, the third most expensive place to live in the entire country. Yeah. Thanks, Silicon Valley. So, because of that, and because of life choices that I've made, that's probably the biggest curse, I would say. Though I don't view it as a curse because my living situation works really well. And I am obviously actively pursuing every avenue that I can to make my writing career as flourishing as possible, including some exciting changes that I'm not going to announce right now in this vlog, but hopefully in the near future you'll hear about. What's another curse? I guess I'm starting with the bad stuff first. Another curse is that when I have this intense drive to tell these stories, they do kind of consume my my brain. So like I've talked about in my video on the writing process and various other vlogs, sometimes I can get into this creative zone where I have to just kind of lock myself up in my room and get the story out. I call it vomiting. My imagination is vomiting onto the page. I know that's gross, but I don't quite know how to describe the surge that comes forth when I am in that mode. I'm learning to work with that. I'm learning to temper it so that I can flip it on and off like a switch and harness it, if you will, so that it works for me. I don't work for it. And so far, that's going well. And I think that's part of growing, finding that balance in all walks of life and in all careers is important. So that's kind of where I'm at. But in the past, it has been a little bit of a curse, I'd say, because I would need to make sure that I had this chunk of time, and so I did a lot of writing in summer where I knew that I would not be disturbed and I could write that way. However, I am incredibly blessed to be able to live this lifestyle and to be able to write that way. One of the reasons I wanted to experiment with making sure that I could write in a different pattern, which I did with The Watcher, Darkling's companion novel, coming out soon, I wrote it in much smaller chunks and much smaller spurts. And in fact, over a longer period of time, most of my books have been written within 2 to 4 weeks. However, this one was written over I want to say like 2 months here and there working on it. Hopefully the finished product is still entertaining and still meets, your standards of what you would expect from a K.M. Rice book. I, of course, since I've changed something, have that doubt that it'll maybe won't and maybe it's utter trash. I don't know. Hopefully it's not. But, what was I even talking about? Curses. Oh, yeah. So, the way of writing that I have previously described, which was, holding myself up in my room, putting a sign on my door handle that says piss off. Yeah, that doesn't work for everyone, and it certainly can't work if my living situation changes, if I'm traveling more, if I, God forbid, have a child. I'm not going to be able to maintain that, so I needed to test myself and make sure that I could work under different conditions. And to be perfectly articulate, I guess, about it, when I was helping write that book in New Zealand, obviously I was not holed up in my room. I was going in 10 hours a day at the office writing. That was a different situation, and that's a different style of book. I think that was, it was easy to do that because it was non-fiction? Is it non-fiction if it's about fictional characters and fictional worlds? I guess? I don't know. Someone else can answer that question for me because I don't know the answer. But when it is creativity, I think I tap into this side of me that is just completely the right side of your brain, or the right side of my brain rather. And that's where time no longer has significance. And when I am in that zone, as I've described before, it is kind of like a state of madness because trivial tasks become the major bane of my existence. They're a nuisance to me, and I kind of have to fade away into the imaginary world that I'm creating for that time to write it and to bring it to life. And I also think, though, that depends on the nature of the story itself. A book like Darkling did not feel taxing to me. I wrote that, was it 15 days? Or 20? I can't remember the math anymore. I think I wrote it over a span of 20 days, but I only wrote on 15 of them. I can keep track of it because every night I would email the manuscript to myself. And there were days, I wrote that in the summer, there was a day like my mom's birthday, we all went to the beach. I didn't write that day. Or a day that I was doing something else, And I was able to do that with that book. I was able to stop, walk away, come back, granted over a very short period of time. And I remember it not feeling so troublesome to me. When I was writing my first 2 books, which are also set in an alternate world, so I was world building. Again, it goes back to my world building vlog. I remember being very anxious over not being in front of my computer writing when I was away because I felt like this world was still calling to me, the characters were calling to me, I had to be there, and I had to be getting it out and onto the page. With Darkling, because it is a much smaller world, not trying to spoil it for those who haven't read it, but we we're in the main character's head in present time, so we know what she knows as she knows it. And that limits the scope of storytelling. So even though it is in a fantastical alternate world, it didn't require as much world building. It wasn't a third person narrative. My upcoming books, the Afterworld series, immensely complicated. Those books I did have to, they were complicated to the point that I was writing them while I wasn't writing them. I was dreaming about them, I was breathing them. They were literally, there is a character in there that physically made me ill trying to write this character. I got headaches trying to write this character. And that's the level of intense creativity that was going into those books. So again, I think it depends on what I'm writing about. There are several books. There's one that I've started multiple times and I have not been able to continue writing until it became something substantial. Even though I have a direction and inspiration still for this book, it is such a heavy subject matter that I find myself getting into such an icky place emotionally to write it that I can only do it in small portions. And if stuff's going on in my life, in my personal life, where I don't feel grounded and I don't feel secure, there's no way that I would risk putting myself into a really insecure place creatively. Actually, to backtrack on that, it's not that there's no way, it's that I prefer not to. However, as I'm saying that and as I'm filming this, I'm wondering, it'd be an interesting psychological experiment to try that, to when you are in a dark place or an uncertain place or a scary place in your life, if you do then get some of that out by writing something heavy. If that helps or if it makes it worse. Sometimes I find for me it helps, because if I'm in a bad place, sometimes one of my favorite, I opened this by talking about Amy Lee. Evanescence is a favorite band, and I'm about to run out of room. 1 second. Okay, I'm back again. This is what happens when you don't plan ahead. But it's all coming full circle, because I was talking about Amy Lee not planning ahead, and now I'm talking about Evanescence, which is her band, and saying how sometimes when I'm in a dark place or I'm hurting, if I listen to their music, which talks about a lot of, not necessarily negative emotions, but what I love about the music is kind of owning those emotions and turning that pain into something beautiful and something creatively satisfying, and it makes you feel like you have some sense of resolution, even if you don't. So yes, in some ways, I think it can be cathartic to channel that negativity into something dark, if that makes sense. That's a little bit off topic, but it is all part of the madness and the curse and all that stuff. So, but going back to the specific question, so those are some of the immediate negatives. The positives, I believe, far outweigh it. Another negative, again, these are all just a matter of perspective, is I do know a lot of people, and I went to school with a lot of people who were getting their MFA because they enjoyed writing, because it was something that they wanted to explore. I meet a lot of people who say, oh yeah, I write, but I do XYZ, all this other stuff as well. That's awesome. And if you know me at all, you know that I actively encourage that as much as I can. However, I am the type of person who, the way that I was made is such that I have no choice in the matter. I have to tell these stories, I have to get them out. And be that in writing, be that in film, be that in a painting, it's not an option for me. I would be writing even if I were never going to publish. You guys know, I've got like 7 books that I'm just sitting on. I mean, I'm not literally like sitting on them. I'd be like way up here if I was. But I've got a lot of unpublished works that I am not necessarily anxious to publish right away, because they're stories that needed to be told, and they were told. And whether someone reads them or not is a different matter. I hope that people do, and of course I hope that I earn a penny or two off of them. But that's never been, the driving force has always been to tell the story, not necessarily to have it be read by as many people as I possibly can. And in that sense, that's part of why I'm remaining an independent author, because I have complete creative control. I'm not having my story be forced into a cookie cutter or be shaped by outside influences of what's hot on the market right now or what will make it sell better, because that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in following the muse and getting that out there, and in a way I've been rewarded for that, because I'll come across reviews of Darkling where people say, gosh, as soon as I thought I knew what was going to happen, I found out I was wrong, you know, and it surprised me, and they appreciated that freshness. That's not something I'm consciously doing, but I think because I am void of those outside influences and I'm following this mystical inner voice that is compelling me to write, it brings that level of, hopefully, of unpredictability or freshness, something that's breaking the mold a little bit and isn't just the story that you've read a lot before, because a lot of times the outside forces, especially marketing forces, will try to push you into that comfortable territory that they can then convince other people that they want and that they want to spend money on. So, I don't know, was that a tangent? That might have been a tangent. The ways, of course, that writing is a blessing far outnumber, or the way that my inner voice is a blessing is far more powerful than any way that it is a curse. But I am only myself. I can't step outside of myself and be someone else and then look at what it's like to be myself and assess which one is better. So I only know my own experience, my own point of view, my own time upon this earth, that as far as I know has just been in this body. But that's as far as I know right now. Maybe I've been here before, maybe I'm coming again, who knows? My point is, when you're trying to compare things, you can't know what you don't know. You can't unknow what you do know. See, there you go, the madness, it's coming out. It's coming out. So, did I answer your question, Lee? I don't know if I did. Maybe I'm too crazy to know if I answered your question. But, I'm sorry I didn't wear a nice top. My hair's got this kind of pre-Raphaelite thing going on. It's kind of boring. But it is what it is. It's really long right now, and it's just kind of sitting there. Sometimes when it's long, it's heavy and it hurts to be put up in a ponytail and stuff because it's a lot of weight on my scalp. And now I'm just talking because I'm trying to assess if I have anything else to say about the question at hand. I have had feedback from other people in the industry, other people who are fellow creatives, recognizing my drive. One of my friends is in a band, and he, one of the things that he always would say when he was telling me how much he admired me was because as long as he knew me, which I don't even know how long we've known each other, like 7 years or something like that, he said, "You've always said, I'm a writer, and I'm a storyteller, and that's what I do." And at the time that we met, I didn't have any books published, I didn't have anything to my name. I'd written some, but nothing was out there. And he always admired that I had that focus and that's what I've done. And like I said, I've met people in the creative industry who also saw that, oh, you're here to do this job or that job, whatever, but I really admire that you are staying true to yourself and you are also pursuing your stories, your dreams, and you're not being blinded by the fact that just because there are other opportunities around you that are good opportunities but would completely put you off course from what you're trying to do, that you're not walking around with stars in your eyes and just taking them all. I guess that I'm that I'm being a proactive character in my own life, at least in that part of my life. And that feedback from people has been really valuable because I don't know how else to exist. I don't know what else to do other than what I'm doing. And that's where I realized they're right. This is a drive in me. The fact that I've never thought, gee, maybe I should have just gotten a job as a software engineer. Not that that's anything negative, but it is completely against how I think, how I operate. And it would be, if I were to compromise, it would be to do it for financial security and things like that, which, do it if you need to. I'm not trying to diss that at all, but I just mean in myself, when I look at the choices that I've made, it has been all following this creed and this drive. Whether it's going to lead me off a cliff or whether it's going to lead me to success remains to be seen. However, I count myself... It's hard, because other people look at me and go, you've done this, you're so successful. And I look at it and I'm like, yeah, but I keep moving the finish line, I keep moving the goal, and so I'm not successful yet because I'm always challenging myself and I'm always trying to meet a new standard that I've set for myself. But that's another subject entirely. And I think I've talked about that before, that impulse to constantly move the goalpost further, because I get highly competitive with myself. So overall, I've realized it's somewhat rare to be made in such a way that there is that inner voice driving you and dictating the course that your life is going to take. I look at my books as my children. I don't know if that's pathetic or if that's really like Keatsian. I don't know. But that's what I have birthed and brought to the world. And sometimes that's immensely satisfying. Other times I look around and I question the choices that I've made. I'm a human being just like everyone else. So, sorry, I meant to mute my phone, but I didn't. Hopefully you didn't even hear that and you're just thinking, what is she talking about? But, yeah, so that's at least scratching the surface on following that inner voice, and if it's a blessing or a curse. If the madness is winning, or if I'm getting more out of it than what I'm putting in, I guess. Maybe. So, that's at least a first stab at that question. That's Legends of the Fall joke, one stab. His character. Stab. The question. Yeah. So, thank you very much for your time. I hope this has helped someone in some way, and please keep the questions coming. You guys are submitting awesome questions. I'm hoping to find more and more time to film to extemporaneously answer said questions. And from me, and this beautiful candle that came with a pewter jewel, Venus Rising is what the candle represented, I wish you all a very fond farewell. Smells good too.